The silent scream. The quantum communication array hummed quietly in the depths of Space Station Omega-7, its massive dish pointed toward the galactic core. Lieutenant Sarah Chen monitored the incoming signals with practiced eyes, sorting through the usual chatter of merchant vessels and diplomatic transmissions. Then something changed. The display flickered, showing a signal unlike anything she had seen before. The transmission was weak, scattered across multiple quantum frequencies in a pattern that seemed almost desperate. Sarah's fingers flew across her console, trying to clean up the signal. Slowly, painfully, a message began to emerge from the cosmic static. This is Zilithian High Command. Homeworld dying. Cosmic storm approaching. Population of 12 billion. Please, anyone. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She had heard of the Zilithians, a peaceful species known for their advanced mathematics and beautiful crystal cities. They lived far beyond the established trade routes, in a system that most civilizations considered too remote to bother with. The signal was so faint, it must have been traveling for weeks. She immediately contacted Captain Elena Vasquez aboard the battleship Thunderstrike. Elena was known throughout the human fleet as someone who never backed down from a challenge, a woman who had earned her rank through pure determination and an unshakable moral compass. "Captain, you need to see this." Sarah transmitted the cleaned-up message to the Thunderstrike. Elena studied the transmission with her characteristic intensity. Her dark eyes reflected the glow of the display as she replayed the message 3 times. Around her, the bridge crew waited in silence. They knew that look. Their captain was making a decision that would change everything. "Marcus, plot a course to the Zilithian system," she ordered her navigation officer. "Full speed." Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez, a young officer with steady hands and sharp instincts, checked his star charts. His face went pale. "Captain, that would take us through the Maelstrom sector. No ship has ever made it through there alive." The Maelstrom sector was legendary among spacefaring civilizations. It was a region of space where dying stars created gravitational anomalies, where quantum storms could tear apart the strongest hulls, and where space itself seemed to twist in impossible ways. Even the most advanced alien civilizations avoided it completely. "How long would it take?" Elena asked. 18 days, if we pushed the engines to their limits. But, Captain, the radiation alone would kill us before we got halfway through." Elena turned to her chief engineer, a gruff man named Thomas Park, who had kept ships running through impossible conditions for 30 years. "Tom, can we modify the shields to handle quantum radiation?" Tom scratched his gray beard thoughtfully. "Maybe. We could reroute power from non-essential systems, reinforce the hull with spare plating. It would be dangerous, but humans have done dangerous things before." The bridge fell silent as Elena weighed the options. Through the viewport, stars twinkled peacefully, giving no hint of the cosmic catastrophe unfolding light years away. She thought about 12 billion lives hanging in the balance, about an entire civilization facing extinction, while the galaxy turned its back. "Signal the Galactic Council," she decided. "Request immediate assistance for the Zilithian evacuation." The response came back within hours, delivered by Counselor Vex, a tall alien with blue skin and cold, calculating eyes. His image appeared on the main screen, radiating the kind of authority that came from representing 1,000 different worlds. "Captain Vasquez, the Council has reviewed your request. While we sympathize with the Zilithian situation, we cannot authorize a mission through the Maelstrom sector. The risk is too great, and the chances of success are negligible. We suggest you focus your efforts on more achievable humanitarian missions." Elena's jaw tightened. "Counselor, we're talking about 12 billion lives. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" "Of course it does, Captain, but we must consider the greater good. Losing an entire fleet to a doomed rescue mission serves no one." The Zilithians chose to settle in a dangerous region of space. They must face the consequences of that choice. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Alina stared at the blank screen for a long moment, then turned to face her crew. These were people she had served with for years, through battles and exploration missions, through triumphs and disasters. They looked back at her with trust and expectation. "You heard the council," she said quietly. "They won't help. But 12 billion people are still going to die unless someone does something." She paused, letting the weight of her next words settle over the room. "I'm going anyway. Anyone who wants to stay behind can transfer to another ship. No questions asked. No mark on their record." The bridge crew exchanged glances. Marcus was the first to speak. "Captain, if you're going through the maelstrom, you'll need the best navigation officer in the fleet." "That's me." Tom nodded gruffly. "And you'll need someone to keep the engines running when space itself tries to tear them apart. I've been waiting my whole career for a challenge like this." One by one, every member of the crew volunteered to stay. Alina felt a surge of pride mixed with terror. She was about to lead these brave people into the most dangerous region of known space, with no guarantee they would ever come back. Word of the mission spread quickly through the human fleet. Within days, 2 more ships volunteered to join them: the heavy cruiser Defiant under Captain James Morrison, and the science vessel Explorer captained by Dr. Lisa Wong. Together, they represented the best of human space technology and determination. The 3 ships spent a week preparing for the journey. Engineers worked around the clock to reinforce hulls and modify shield systems. The science team studied every available piece of data about the Maelstrom sector, looking for safe passage routes that might not exist. Medical teams prepared for radiation exposure and gravitational stress injuries. Alina stood in the observation deck of the Thunderstrike, watching her crew make final preparations. Earth hung in the distance, a blue marble that had given birth to a species too stubborn to know when to quit. Humans had crawled out of caves, survived ice ages, conquered their own violent planet, and reached for the stars. Now they were about to attempt something that every other civilization considered impossible. "Second thoughts, Captain." Dr. Wang's voice came from behind her. The scientist was a small woman with keen eyes and a mind that could solve problems others couldn't even understand. "Plenty," Alina admitted. "But that's not going to stop us." "Good. I've been analyzing the quantum storm patterns in the Maelstrom. There might be a way through if we time it right, and if we're willing to push our ships beyond their design limits." "How far beyond?" Dr. Wang smiled grimly. "Far enough that any sane species would never try it. Lucky for us, sanity has never been humanity's strong suit." The departure ceremony was simple. The 3 human ships formed up in formation, their crews checking systems one final time. Messages of support came in from human colonies throughout the galaxy, along with a few from alien allies who admired their courage even if they couldn't help. Alina opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is Captain Vasquez. In 30 minutes, we'll enter the Maelstrom sector. What we're about to attempt has never been done before. The odds are against us, the dangers are real, and the galaxy has already written us off. But 12 billion people are counting on us, and we won't let them down. That's what makes us human. We don't give up, we don't abandon hope, and we never leave anyone behind." The ships engaged their engines and began the long journey toward the Maelstrom sector. Behind them, Space Station Omega-7 tracked their progress until they disappeared beyond the range of sensors. Ahead lay the most dangerous region of space in the known galaxy, and beyond that, a dying world that needed their help. As the stars shifted around them, and the first gravitational anomalies began to register on their sensors, Alina felt a familiar mix of fear and excitement. This was what humans did best: the impossible, the crazy, the things that nobody else would even attempt. They were about to find out if human determination could overcome the fundamental forces of the universe itself. The Maelstrom sector waited ahead, a swirling nightmare of cosmic destruction. But somewhere beyond it, 12 billion voices were calling for help, and the humans were coming. Through hell and back. The first gravitational wave hit the Thunderstrike, like a giant invisible hand, sending the massive ship tumbling through space. Alina gripped her captain's chair as the artificial gravity struggled to compensate, watching her crew fight to maintain control of their stations. "Damage report," she called over the screaming of stressed metal. "Hull integrity holding at 92%. Tom reported, his voice tight with concentration. "But we got microfractures forming along the port side. The next wave might punch right through." They had been in the Maelstrom sector for 6 days, and it had been 6 days of pure hell. The region of space was even worse than the warnings had suggested. Dying stars created gravitational whirlpools that could crush a ship in seconds. Quantum storms erupted without warning, filling space with radiation that could cook a crew alive. And through it all, the very fabric of reality seemed to twist and bend in ways that hurt to look at. The Defiant had already lost half its shield capacity to a particularly vicious quantum burst. The Explorer was running on backup power after a gravitational shear had damaged its main reactor. But somehow, impossibly, all 3 ships were still intact and moving forward. "Dr. Wang, how much further?" Elena asked over the intercom. The scientist's voice crackled back, distorted by the electromagnetic interference that filled the region. "If my calculations are correct, we should reach the edge of the Maelstrom in approximately 18 hours. But Elena, we're running out of time. The storm systems are getting worse, and our ships can't take much more of this punishment." Elena knew she was right. The human ships were tough, built to survive the harsh conditions around Earth and in the contested zones of human space. But they weren't designed for the kind of cosmic violence they were experiencing in the Maelstrom. Every system was pushed to the breaking point. Every crew member was exhausted from the constant stress of near-death experiences. "Marcus, any sign of the Zilithian system?" she asked. Her navigation officer was pale with fatigue, but his voice remained steady. "I'm picking up something on long-range sensors. It could be a star system, but the interference makes it hard to tell." Another gravitational wave shook the ship, this one gentler than the last. Elena felt a spark of hope. Maybe they were finally reaching the far edge of the Maelstrom. Maybe they would actually make it through alive. 12 hours later, the 3 human ships limped out of the cosmic nightmare that was the Maelstrom sector. Their hulls were scared, their crews were exhausted, but they had done something that no other species had ever accomplished. They had crossed the most dangerous region of space in the galaxy and lived to tell about it. Ahead of them lay the Zilithian system, and it was even worse than Elena had feared. The star was in its death throes, bloated and red, throwing off massive solar flares that bathed the inner planets in deadly radiation. The 4th planet, the Zilithian homeworld, was partially shrouded in a shimmering energy field that flickered and pulsed like a dying heartbeat. "That's their planetary shield," Dr. Wang reported after scanning the system. "It's the only thing keeping the solar radiation from sterilizing the surface. But it's failing. I estimate they have maybe 48 hours before complete collapse." Elena opened a communication channel to the planet. "Zilithian High Command, this is Captain Elena Vasquez of the human fleet. We received your distress signal. We're here to help." The response came back quickly, filled with disbelief and desperate hope. The voice belonged to someone called Prime Counselor Zeth, and it shook with emotion as it spoke. "Humans, you came through the Maelstrom. That's impossible. No ship has ever survived that journey." "We're here," Elena said simply. "How many people do you need to evacuate?" 12 billion, but we have no ships capable of interstellar travel. Our technology focuses on planetary engineering and scientific research. We never needed to build evacuation fleets." Elena looked around her bridge at her tired crew. 3 ships, 12 billion people, and less than 2 days to get them all to safety. It was an impossible task, but humans had been accomplishing impossible tasks for as long as anyone could remember. "Send us your population distribution data," she ordered. "We'll figure out how to get everyone off the planet." The next few hours were a blur of planning and preparation. Dr. Wan worked with Zilithian scientists to identify the most densely populated areas. Captain Morrison used the Defiant's heavy lift capabilities to begin constructing temporary habitats in the cargo holds of all three ships. Alina coordinated with the planetary authorities to organize the evacuation zones. The Zilithians themselves were remarkable. They stood about 7 feet tall with silvery skin that reflected light in beautiful patterns. Their technology was advanced in ways that human science could barely understand, but it was all focused on creation and research rather than survival and warfare. They had never needed to fight for their lives, the way humans had. As the human ships descended toward the planet's surface, Alina was struck by the beauty of Zilithian civilization. Their cities were works of art, all flowing curves and crystal spires that seemed to grow naturally from the landscape. Gardens and parks were everywhere, filled with alien plants that glowed with their own inner light. It was a peaceful, beautiful world that deserved to survive. But there was no time to admire the scenery. The planetary shield was failing faster than expected, and solar radiation was already beginning to affect the northern continents. The Zilithians had organized themselves into evacuation groups, but moving 12 billion people was like trying to empty an ocean with a teacup. "We need a miracle," Tom muttered as he watched the numbers on his screen. At their current rate, they could maybe evacuate 50 million people before the shield collapsed completely. That's when Alina had an idea that was so crazy it just might work. "Dr. Wang, what's the structural integrity of those crystal cities?" "Extremely high. The Zilithians grow their buildings from some kind of organic crystal matrix." "Why?" "Because we're not just evacuating people. We're evacuating entire cities." The plan was insane. Instead of trying to move 12 billion individuals, they would use the human ship's tractor beams to lift entire city sections into orbit. The Zilithian crystal technology was strong enough to survive the stress, and their cities were designed as self-contained ecosystems that could function independently. It took 16 hours of continuous work, but slowly, impossibly, it began to work. The thunderstrike lifted a residential district containing 2 million Zilithians. The Defiant grabbed an entire university complex with 3 million inhabitants. The Explorer, despite its smaller size, managed to secure a cultural center that housed another 1 million people. But even as they worked, the planetary shield continued to weaken. Solar flares were getting through, turning parts of the planet's surface into radioactive wastelands. Alina watched the radiation readings climb and knew they were running out of time. That's when the ancient defense systems activated. Deep beneath the planet's surface, automated systems that had been dormant for millennia suddenly came online. Massive energy cannons emerged from hidden locations and began firing at the human ships, apparently programmed to prevent any large-scale removal of planetary resources. Shields at 60%. Marcus reported as energy blasts hammered the thunderstrike. "They're using some kind of quantum disruption technology. Our shields aren't designed to handle this." Alina made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "All ships, continue the evacuation. Do not return fire. We save as many as we can." The human ships took devastating punishment as they continued their rescue mission. The Defiant lost its main engines but kept pulling city sections into orbit using maneuvering thrusters. The Explorer's shields failed completely, but Dr. Wang kept the ship operational through sheer willpower and creative engineering. The thunderstrike absorbed hit after hit, its hull glowing red-hot from the constant barrage. But they didn't stop. They couldn't stop. With each city section they lifted, millions more Zilithians were saved from the approaching solar catastrophe. The alien defense systems pounded them relentlessly, but human determination proved stronger than ancient programming. In the final hour, as the planetary shield collapsed and deadly radiation began sterilizing the surface, the 3 human ships managed to lift the last major population centers into orbit. 12 billion Zilithians were now housed in floating city sections, their lives saved by the stubborn refusal of 3 human crews to give up. The journey back through the Maelstrom sector was even more harrowing than the trip in. The human ships were damaged, overloaded, and carrying precious cargo that couldn't be risked. But Elena and her crews had learned something during their first passage. The maelstrom wasn't just dangerous, it was predictable. Its patterns could be read, its moods could be anticipated, and humans, it turned out, were very good at learning from near-death experiences. 23 days after leaving Earth, the battered human fleet emerged from the maelstrom sector with 12 billion Zilithian refugees. The galaxy watched in stunned amazement as news of the rescue spread through civilized space. The Galactic Council, which had dismissed the mission as impossible, suddenly found itself dealing with the largest humanitarian crisis in galactic history. Elena stood on the bridge of the Thunderstrike, watching as Zilithian city sections were carefully lowered onto habitable worlds throughout human space. Her ship was barely holding together, her crew was exhausted beyond measure, but they had done something that would be remembered for generations. Prime Counselor Zeth appeared on her communication screen, his silvery features showing an emotion that needed no translation. "Captain Vasquez, there are no words in our language to express what you have done for us. You have saved not just our lives, but our entire civilization." Elena smiled tiredly. "That's what humans do. We help." The rescue of the Zilithian civilization changed humanity's standing in the galaxy forever. No longer were they seen as the dangerous newcomers from the death world. They were the species that would cross impossible distances and face unthinkable dangers to save lives. They were the ones who answered when the stars called for help. And in the years that followed, when other civilizations faced extinction, when disasters struck and hope seemed lost, there was always the same message spreading through space: send word to the humans. They'll come.